Hello again everyone, welcome back to DCS World. Today we'll be going over the F16C startup tutorial, but a bit more advanced this time. And as you can see, our cockpit is not open on our jet, so we're going to go ahead and let the crew chiefs know, so that way they could pop it open and we could go ahead and hop in. I will put the two checklists that I'm using. One is a public document and the other one is found on the Eagle Dynamics forum. Alright, so now that we're in the jet, we're going to go ahead and get started. Mind you, this is going to be a very long, not a very long, but a reasonably long video. Startup, we'll be going over the interior checks, so the very basics to before starting the engine, and then starting, and then after the engines are started. So it's going to be quite a bit of info. I'll try to be as quickly as possible, but also very informative, hopefully for some of you who are brand new to DCS and may have just gotten the F16. As a maintainer, most of the time you're looking for your switches to be off, safe, or normal. As we're going through, we're probably going to set up some of the switches as we go, as we do our interior check. So first things first, we're going to go over to our test panel here, back left console, and make sure that our Pro Heat is set to off. O-Box test switch is set to off. EPU gen switch is off. Flick is power switch is set to normal. Moving on to the flight control panel, making sure your digital backup is off. Your alt flap extend is set to normal. Your manual TF flyup is in disable. Your LE flaps is auto. Your Flickus reset switch is set to off, and your Flickus bit test switch is set to off. Moving over to the manual trim panel here. Make sure your trim knobs are all centered as best as you can, and make sure your trim AP disconnect switch is set to normal. Moving over to the fuel panel here, you're going to make sure that your master switch is set to master and the guard is down. Make sure your tank inerting is off and your engine feed is set to normal, and your air refueling door switch here is set to close. Moving down to the IFF panel, you're going to make sure your master switch is set to off, your M4 code set to AB, your enable switch is set to normal, and 77, and just kind of general stuff. You don't really ever have to mess with this. I mean, you can if you wanted to, but as far as I know, it doesn't have a full function yet in DCS. Your CNI knob, leave that in UFC. Moving down to the external lighting panel, you can leave your anti-collision to 1, keep it in flash, and we're going to set our wing and tail light to bright. Then I will demonstrate what this does, so I'm going to put it in bright, and your formations, we can leave that on, and set our master to normal, and aerial refueling light can stay in bright. The reason why I set these lights is so when we start the engine, anti-collision lights turn on, and you just want all your lights on so that way if there is any ground crew, they know that the engine is on and running. If they're at a distance, if they're up close, hopefully they're smart enough and they can actually hear it, because I mean it's a jet, so it's pretty freaking loud. Moving to our EPU panel, you're going to make sure that it's in normal. Our electrical panel here, you're going to make sure it's off for the battery switch, main power battery switch. I went ahead and moved the throttle out of the way. Make sure that your max power switch is off. Your afterburner reset switch is set to normal, and your engine control switch is set to pry with the guard down. You can move your throttle around if you wanted to. Just make sure it works. Make sure your jet fuel starter is set to off. Moving up to your manual pitch override switch, make sure it's set to normal. We're going to go ahead and set our radio to both, so that way when we turn on we can talk to ground crew, because there's going to be a couple things we ask them to do. And you could set your volume knobs as you so please, and your other audio switches for your voice, your missile, your threat, and your TF. Moving down to the audio 2 panel here for your intercom and TACAN, I'm going to set that off, and ILS I'm going to set that to almost off. And your mic hot switch, you can just leave it in off. As far as I know, the ECM and the AVTR are not modeled yet. You cannot click on anything, so there's nothing to worry about on those two panels. Moving over to the left auxiliary console here, close the canopy lock just so it makes it easier to see. We're going to make sure on your CMDS that all your switches are down for RWR, jammer, MWS, your 0102 for other countermeasures, and your chaff flare switches are down, mode is set to off, program to 1, and making sure that your jettison, big one, is set to off. You can also make sure while you're in this area to verify your HMCS, your helmet mounting queuing sight, is off. Also verify that your landing gear is set to down, your hook is up, parking brake is set to anti-skid, your brakes is on channel 1, your ground jettison enable switch set to off, and you can also take this time to set the current category of config that you have loaded on. We're going to keep it out category 1 for now because we just have a very light air-to-air load with a centerline tank. Moving up to our instrument panel here, we're going to make sure our RF is set to normal, laser is off, master arm off, and make sure for your autopilot switches, your roll and pitch are set to attitude hold for roll, and AP off or autopilot off for your pitch. Moving up to your ICP, there's nothing really to check here, so you don't have to worry about checking anything for startup on your ICP. Down to your fuel quantity selector, just make sure that your fuel quantity selector knob is set to normal and your external fuel transfer switch is set to normal. You could check your time if you wanted to, and just a little tidbit, if you press this button right here on the time, you can start the second hand, stop it, and reset it. You can also set the time by left clicking and actually setting it if you so desired. But moving on to the sensor power, you're going to make sure your left hardpoint, right hardpoint switches are off, your FCR is off, your radar altimeter is off. Moving to your HUD panel, you're going to make sure you could set these switches to stuff you so desire. I'll go over this when we turn the HUD on and show you kind of what's working and what's not working at the moment. Moving to your nuclear consent switch, you can't do anything with it, so you don't have to worry about it. CRAD switch, you don't really need to worry about that at the moment. Your internal lighting panel right here, that just says lighting, you can set these to your so desired needs, but I'm going to go ahead and switch them off because it's daytime and I don't really need them on. I will demonstrate what they look like when they are on and show you what this switch right here actually does. Your Zero Eyes OFP switch, just make sure it's off and the guard is down. You can switch it if you need it to, but as far as I know, it's not modeled yet. Your voice message switch right here, make sure it's in voice message. I'll also demonstrate what this does when you inhibit it. Alright, moving over to our air conditioning panel here, just make sure the temp is in auto, even though you can set it to whatever it is you need it to, I guess, but you know, simulator, so maybe one day they'll actually make this do something. Then our air source, just make sure it's in normal. KY58, as far as I know in the F16 currently in DCS, this is not modeled, but you can mess with the switches if you wanted to. Moving over to the oxygen panel, make sure your emergency selector switch here is in normal. Make sure your other middle switch here for your oxygen is in normal, and make sure your supply is on. Moving over to the anti-ice and antenna selector panel, just make sure it's in auto or on if you need it to be. Make sure your IFF and UHF are both set to normal. Your avionics panel here, just make sure all the switches are off. Alright, so now that we went over the interior cockpit check and set certain knobs to what it is they need to be set to for us as we start up the jet, right before you start the engine, we're going to verify some switches just to make sure, just in case you kind of were messing with them during the walkthrough, essentially. So field master, make sure it's in master. Engine feed is in normal. Your EPU is set to normal. Your engine control switch is set to pry. Throttle is off. Landing gear is down. Your hook is up. Master switch is in off. And your air source is in normal. Before starting up, we're going to take our main battery switch and put it into battery. Go over to our Flickus power test switch and put it into test. And verify that the left and right and 1 and 2 channels are showing. Come over to our aircraft battery control panel and verify the TO Flickus and the Flickus PMG lights turn on, and then release and verify that they go out and the lights over here go out. Alright, so after doing that, I'm going to go ahead and take the main power switch and put it into main power. Verify that the EPU Gen and EPU PMG lights found here are off. We're going to go ahead and set our radio to the ATC frequency. And bring that back out and close our canopy. Once we do that, we'll ask for startup.
Caballetti, in field, 1-1, request startup.
Enfield 1-1, Caballetti, cleared for startup, wind 064, at 4 meters per second.
Alright, so now that we got clearance to start up from the tower, a couple things we're going to do. I'm going to talk about it and then do it, and then talk a little bit more about it too. So the first thing we're going to do is take our jet fuel starter switch here, put it into 2, watch our RPM switch run up to 20. Once that happens, we're going to take our throttle from off to idle, and you'll know if it's at idle because these white lines here will match up. We're going to verify that our engine warning lights and hydraulic oil pressure turn off. The engine light will turn off at around 55 RPM, so we're going to go ahead and do that. And you're also going to verify that your sec light on your master caution panel turns off and your electrical system caution light turns off as well. Verify that your run light turns on. So now we're at 20 RPM. We're going to go ahead and go from off to idle. Monitor our instruments. Sec light went out. Engine light should be out shortly. There we go. Wait for it to go into idle. And wait for all the switches to settle, including your EPU and hydraulics. Verify that your run light goes out and your jet fuel starter is back to off. Alright, so I'll put on the screen a little screenshot of the increments for all these instrument right here, all the needles and everything. So a couple things you're looking for after the engine is started is verifying that your fuel flow is between 500 and 1500, making sure your oil pressure is a minimum of 15. Your nozzle position is greater than 80. RPM is between 65 and 77. And your fan turbine inlet temperature is 625 degrees Celsius or less, which this definitely is. And verifying your hydraulics are between 2850 and 3250 for both A and B. We're going to double check our EPU and make sure it's between 95 and 102%. Alright, so now that we got the engine started, running idle, we're going to come over to our test panel back here. We're going to throw our probe heat switch to probe heat, verify lights remain off, and put it into test, and verify that our probe heat switch is turned on and flashing. And we're going to come over here back to the test panel and go to fire and overheat detection button, press it, come over to our caution panel, master caution panel, and verify the overheat is on and the engine fire caution light is on the glare shield here. Go ahead and turn it off, verify the lights turn off. And we're gonna check our malfunction and indicator lights by pressing this button right here.
Pull up. Altitude.
And just going through verifying that all the button or all the lights turn on.
Flare. Low. Out. Lock. Caution. Bingo. Beta. IFS.
And you can let go of the button and make sure all the lights turn off. So I'm going to demonstrate what the inhibit switch here does. So if you put it into inhibit and then press this button, all you get are the lights. You don't get any auditorial warnings or anything like that. So if you're flying around and you just are flying low and you don't want to hear the constant low altitude warning, you go ahead and put that into inhibit and that will shut that completely off for you. So after those tests check out good, we're going to run 2 tests before we turn our avionics on. So once we turn our avionics on, we're going to do the alignment, put it into normal, and any type of movement of the jet can actually degrade and actually stop the test from running, in which we would have to restart the test, so we don't want to do that. So first things first, to make sure that we're not going to move from this position, I'm going to ask the ground crew to place some chocks.
Chief, place the wheel chocks.
Copy. Wheel chocks are now in place.
Alright, so now that the wheel chocks are in place, you could, if you wanted to verify, since we don't have an actual crew chief to verify for us out here, you could go to the external view and verify, but currently the F16 it does not have any chocks modeled for it, so you just kind of have to hope for the best. So we're going to hold the toe brakes down. First test we're going to do is we're going to do our sec check on the engine control panel here. Put it to sec and you'll hear the RPMs run down. Engine will noticeably be down a lot and your nozzle position will go to 0. And on the master caution light panel, your sec light will turn on. And all we're going to do is run the engine to mill and get it to, or try to get it to 85%, depending on how sensitive your throttle settings are. This could be a little bit of movement or a lot of movement. So as long as you get to 85 and then bring it back down and monitor the controls. Alright, so you saw the oil temperature move, RPM move, and your F-tip move. So after that is done, we're going to turn off that, back to pry, close the guard, verify that the sec light went out and the RPMs went back to the normal idle and your nozzle position went back to above 80%. Next test we're going to run is the EPU test. So we're going to come over to our oxygen panel, put it into 100%, and careful because this will move and you'll actually get a low oxygen warning. So you're going to put it to 100%, run the engine 10% above the normal idle speed, so right around there is good, and turn APU to APU Gen. Verify that your lights go on for EPU, your air light turns on, and your hydrazine does not come on, and nor does your EPU and EPU or EPU Gen and EPU PMG lights do not turn on. Let it go. Verify that light goes out. Bring your throttle back down, and go back to normal. And as you can tell, our oxygen almost get out of the green there. Once it does, you will get a low oxygen warning caution light on your right glare shield. Alright, so once that's done, we're going to come over to our avionics panel and turn on our switches here. We're going to turn on everything except for the map because that is not installed on the block 50 for the F16. We're going to take our alignment knob and turn it to normal. As I stated in the last video, once you put it into normal, this does take a lot longer for it to align. But needless to say, we gotta demonstrate it just to show how long it actually does take and to show a couple things that you gotta do within the first 2 minutes of running it. But before we do that, we're gonna turn our mid switch to on for our TAC can and IFF stuff too. So you can see people on here. Alright, so within the first 2 minutes of the alignment, you need to verify your lat and long and altitude by pressing enter on the ICP, and you can use the rocker switch here to move down. And once you verify that, you could come to your F10 map. Before you do that, just to show you, click on your air, and you can see the coordinates down here, and you can notice that those don't match with what's on here. So you go to F10 and hit left Alt and Y, and now you have the correct coordinates that the F16 is using. So 4155.6, 4151.6. Go back over to the chat and verify the north and east and lat long are 4155.6 and 4151.6. And you can verify that your altitude is correct by looking right here. It's going to be a little different, but that's alright. Alright, so now we're going to come over to our sensor power panel here, and we're going to go ahead and turn our radar altimeter and our FCR on. And if you have a targeting pod on the right hard point, you could go ahead and turn that on, but we do not, so I'm going to leave that off, and we're going to leave the left hard point off as well. We're going to go ahead and turn the HUD on and go over the HUD panel here for a little bit. So this first switch here, if you want it to kind of clean your HUD up, go ahead and turn the switch off, and boom, nice and clean. Moving it up doesn't really do anything just yet in DCS, so it's either that, middle position, or off. I'm going to leave it off. This next switch right here, as far as I know, only turns off your ladder right here. Then your DED data switch right here puts your DED info on the actual HUD itself. So if you really wanted to really clean things up while you're reading, you can get rid of that, and boom. This switch right here, not modeled yet, doesn't do anything. This switch right here is to change from ground speed to true airspeed to calibrate it, and you can see all that if you turn this back on. You can see the C right here for calibrate it, true, ground speed. Ground speed at the moment I know does not work, but I'm pretty sure that true airspeed does work. And you can set your radar altimeter to either 1, day and night operations, and as far as I know, this switch doesn't do anything yet either, so we're just going to leave it alone. And again, coming over to the lighting panel, if you really wanted to, you could adjust these, but just to demonstrate what they look like at full brightness, that is what they look like. This switch, or this knob right here, controls the brightness of your DED. This switch adjusts the brightness of your master caution lights. Make sure your oxygen is back to normal. Another little thing I'm going to go over is the fuel quantity selector and verifying that our fuel is good. So switch it to test. Verify that the forward fuel and aft fuel low. Switch it, caution lights turn on. And verify that your needles point to 2000 plus or minus 100 and 6000 plus or minus 100. And release it, and verify they go back to the normal position and your lights turn off. You can also check to verify that you have fuel in your reservoir, your internal wing. We don't have external wing pylons for the fuels, and external center, and just verifying that your external fuels transfers to normal. Another thing we're going to do is take our standby SAI, take the flag off, and I just set it to the center, kind of match this center one right here, and you'll notice that this says ready and align. Once it's flashing, it's good to go, but you also want to wait till it says 8.66, and since that's almost done, we're going to wipe our flight control surfaces in preparation for the bit, and verify that the speed brake indicator here works. That is showing open, and that says closed. Then we're going to come over to our flight controls panel and put our flicky bit test to bit and let it run. It takes about 45 seconds. Our alignment is done, so we can go ahead and come over here and put it into nav. Obviously, this is going a lot slower than it normally would if you were to just do it. But because I'm taking the time and going over as much as I can as possible to really make sure you have an understanding of the startup, at the end I will hop into another jet and do a clean startup without doing any pausing or anything. I'll just run through it. So that's running. We're going to turn our just got done. So we'll do another test after we turn our CMDS on. Just turn those switches on. And if you wanted to, you can turn your HMCS on. And if you go DMS down until it turns off, you can have it off. Alright, and then you can turn your RWR on. And then we're going to come back over here, turn our digital backup to digital backup. Verify that your DBU light turns on. And go ahead and cycle the controls again. Verify that they all have normal operation. And once you do that, you turn back off. Come over to your trim AP disconnect and disconnect it. And move your trim hat switch. Verify that none of your needles move for your roller or pitch. And put it back to normal. And I'm not going to do it at this time, but you can go ahead and cycle them again to verify that they do indeed move. One of the other things you do after you do your flickus bit is you do your manual pitch override, which you push your stick forward and go ahead and press the switch and observe that the elevators point more down. Let it go and verify their return position. That's how you do your manual pitch override. We're going to come over here, take our IFF master switch and put it into normal. Come over to our fuselage light. That is the light on the tail. Right here, if you can see my mouse cursor. Light on the left side, and there's a light on the opposite side that light up the tail. I usually just keep that off during the day because there's no really need. You can see it, like I can see all theirs, so there's no need to have it on during the day. Really, for night operations is when it's most useful. And another thing I'm going to demonstrate is the flashlight. So flashlight, if you go to adjust control and type in for search flashlight, you can see you have controls here for flashlight. This is what I've bound my flashlight to, so I can operate it when I need it during the night before I start up the jet, because you can't see nothing if it's a very dark night. You can't see anything at all, so hitting L turns it on. I have it set up to where I could brighten it and take down the brightness. It does it incrementally, and you can change the light from white to green, so you can really get the full potential of all your green lighting when you turn the cockpit lights on. Alright, so after all that, if you want to prepare to taxi, don't forget to call the crew chiefs again and remove the chocks and turn on your nose wheel steering by pressing your nose wheel steering button on your stick. And if you're going to be doing aerial refueling, you can also check your aerial refueling door. go ahead and arm your ejection seat now. If you wanted to, you could wait till you taxi all the way down there, but we're just going to do it now. And you go ahead and make sure your lights work if you wanted to for your taxiing. And if you're about to taxi, you turn your light to taxi. Don't forget to turn your probe heat on before you take off if you needed to, which you do need to before you take off, so I like to do it before I taxi so I don't forget. And then just verify that it's on when I get down there. Alright, so now that the jet is fully started up and ready to go for taxi, I will see you in the next video, which we will go over taxiing and takeoff. So next time, have a good one. Like and subscribe if you liked what you see. If you didn't, feel free to tell me in the comments below what I can do better, what you do, or anything. So, until then, have a good one. If you want to stick around, I'm going to do the startup without any interruptions whatsoever. So, later.
Chief, place the wheel chocks.
Copy. Wheel chocks are now in place.
Capoletti, infield, 1-1. Request startup.
Enfield 1-1. Capoletti, cleared for startup. Wind 064 at 4 meters per second.
Pull up. Altitude. Warning. Jammer. Counter. Chat flare. Low. Out. Block. Caution. Bingo. Beta. ISS.
chocks.
Copy. Wheel chocks are now removed.